When was your last I gotta get the hell out of here moment? My mom was content with living with bedbugs. A creepy 50-year-old man who might pay our bills as well as his kids and our cousins all in a itty mobile home that she hadn't been making payments on. It was in such bad shape, it wasn't even worth repossessing. I could never have any time to myself. I was always surrounded by bratty kids while constantly scratching at the bite marks the bugs left. I'd go to bed at night wearing sweats with socks on hot nights, just to try and keep the damn bugs off me. It didn't work. When I was around 14, I went to go live with my grandma. Of course, that made me a backstabber in the eyes of my mom, but she's not relevant in my life anymore. Edit. Obligatory. I didn't expect this to blow up so much. Thanks for the gold, silver, and support. And my manager told me, sometimes you need to make a choice between your health and your job. I was visiting London and just got out of sports bar by myself at 3 AM. Drunk as it, I decide to walk from the bar, near Leicester Square, to my hotel, near King's Cross. Despite not knowing exactly where I am or how to get to the hotel, I start walking in a direction and within a minute I'm walking down a rather wide shopping street when I see two bald guys coming the other way. Both pretty much built brick houses, and looking like they want to start it. They hadn't spotted me yet, but one guy suddenly walks to the side of the street and just flat out punches the steel grate in front of a shop entrance as hard as he can. I pretty much did a straight 180, double timed it back to the bar, and asked the nice bouncers to get me a cab. Cab drops me off in front of the hotel and I go to bed without getting the it kicked out of me first. It was Friday. I was in a room full of 5th graders playing the recorder. I go to school in Poughkeepsie. One time my friends and I were walking along some train tracks by the river on a foggy night. Not smart. We could barely see 5 feet ahead, but we weren't afraid because it was a popular hangout spot. All of a sudden we hear loud barking and a ducking crackhead lunges out of the fog at us, barking like a dog. The fog around him cleared up and we could see more druggies lying under some leaves by the side of the tracks, watching us and laughing. Never ran so fast or came so close to hitting myself in my life. I was in New Orleans interviewing for a job that required driving a company vehicle 10 hours a day that had valuable specialty equipment. Interview is going great and we get to the part about pay. Guy goes, we can offer you 10 an hour. A big smile came over my face and I leaned over to shake his hand. He thought I was agreeing. I was telling him bye. Popeyes pays around 15 an hour here. My friend's crazy drunk cousin grabbed a circular saw in attempt to kill me because he thought I said something bad about his aunt. I left. Last week, I was visiting Los Angeles with my 22-year-old daughter. I had to fill the tank of the rental car. I googled the cheapest gas and waited in line. There was a scummy homeless man yelling, clearly mentally ill. When we got to the pump was broken. You know, when you fill 10 cents of gas and it stops. It took a full minute to get $1 of gas when the homeless man came up to us. He was yelling, "Now this is a nice car." I grabbed the pump from my daughter and said, "Hit the road," and we drove off. Funny thing is, my daughter wasn't scared because she was listening to what the man was yelling about. Apparently, the homeless man was being harassed by another driver. The other driver told him not to touch his car. The car was a piece of it and the homeless man was making fun of him. "Oh, don't touch this car. Your car is a piece of it." That's when he came to our car. "Now this is a nice car. I won't touch this one. But yours is a piece of it, you asshole." So it ended up being pretty funny. I panicked for nothing. This was like 5 years ago. I was 24 years old. Got way too drunk at my local bar and ended up going back to this guy's apartment. It was decorated by somebody's grandmother for sure. There were candelabras everywhere. He lit all of them, then sat me on the couch and proceeded to go through all of these old family photo albums, specifically looking at pictures of his siblings and cousins as children. No joke, he was getting so hard that I could see the album start moving up and down. Then he asked me if I had any pictures of when I was a child or my siblings when they were children. Never sobered up so fast and booked it right the F out of there. Edit, because I got messages about drunk driving. This was in Nick. I walked 16 blocks through East Harlem and never felt so safe in my life. I'd lived in the same crap neighborhood for a couple years and was living further into the worst of it at a weekly rent place. In prior years my car had been broken into. A house's garage had been broken into. I had some stuff stolen. I'd heard gunshots, but I'd never seen anything all that bad. At the weekly rental, we heard a dude shot dead in the lot next door. The police came knocking to interview neighbors, and everyone else had lived there longer and refused to open the door in case of potential gang retaliation. It was a gang dispute according to later newspaper reports, but in that area it was usually safe to say anything involving guns was gang related. That was the ducking end of that. I found a place far enough outside the city that rent was still cheap, dealt with the long commute, and enjoyed the country. The guy that I met, college educated, handsome, retro digs in Long Beach car, articulate, funny, packed a picnic for our blind date complete with cloth napkins, and back to his place, and the kitchen was a hoarder's dream. At least 6 full sets of dishes. Dirty, sitting in neatly stacked piles everywhere. Pots and pans. The same thing. Hundreds of dollars worth of iron cookware stacked on the floor, rusting. Instead of washing dishes he would buy more. Nope, the duck out. When my, now ex-husband called to me to tell me the reason why he was late for dinner was because he was arrested for masturbating in public, I got out. I'm too old for that. My husband came home from a business trip early yesterday and failed to mention it to me. I heard someone jiggling the doorknob and sprinted out the back door, not getting murdered in my own house. Oh boy, I have another one. My ex-best friend convinced me to go to a concert with her. I told her I couldn't because I had a long drive the next morning and didn't want to waste gas or go to bed too late, and she said it was fine. She would drive and would get me home right after the concert. Went to the concert. It was fine. I was ready to go home, but she told me she wanted to go to an after party with the band because her crush would be there. I agreed because she really wanted to get with this guy. The chances of it happening seemed high, and I wanted her to be happy. Turns out the after party was at a decent hotel. Underage kids were straight up walking in with handles of alcohol, and it was really obvious what was going on. The receptionist was eyeing everyone, but nobody gave a duck. My friend and I got to the room and we were the only girls there. Around 40 drunk college guys and 2 girls, both under 110 pounds. I'd never experienced being looked at like a juicy steak until that moment. I told her we had to go, but she was hellbent on staying with her crush. I couldn't convince her, so I called my mom, the most awkward phone conversation of my life, and had her pick me up. Turns out the receptionist called the cops soon after I left and the party got broken up. I think some people got charged. Crazy guy on the LRT train C-train taking a stone out of his mouth and saying he killed a guy with it. But it was self-defense, so it's okay, right? Yeah. That was peak I gotta get the hell out of here for me. Plus he smelled like puke. That didn't help either. Minor update. It was Calgary, not Edmonton. I worked in a factory that made large plastic items via filling molds with powder and sending into a giant industrial oven that heated to 550 degrees Fahrenheit. At the end of the week I was cleaning said oven and my boss, not knowing I was inside, turned it on. At the sound of hydraulic doors closing I dove out of the oven just as they closed and avoided free cremation. I both got the hell out of that oven and that company pretty quick. I told this once before, but when I was about 8 years old, I was in the car with my parents. They were arguing, which they did a lot, but being trapped in that metal box with both of them screaming back and forth became too much. We stopped at a red light and I unbuckled my seatbelt and got out of the car and started running. My mom, who was in the passenger's seat, ran out after me, and after he pulled over the car my dad did as well. They caught up to me and their attitudes completely changed. They promised they wouldn't fight again. A promise they broke time and time again until their divorce. But they never did it again in the car. I was at a marketing recruitment presentation in college and this guy started talking about how we would be able to go to Disneyland and buy Ferraris if we just signed up to his exclusive elite program. We just had to make a small down payment right there in the auditorium. And we shouldn't talk about it with friends or family because haters online had damaged the company's reputation. Edit. It was Amway. And the guy was Charlie D'Urso. In the fall I was walking down a trail in the woods during the middle of the day. A raccoon was sitting in the middle of the trail, facing us, sitting on its butt, head kind of lowered, bugs buzzing all around it. It didn't move at all. It just stared at us. We decided to turn around. I don't know what rabies looks like, but that's not how I want to find out. It was years ago, when I was in 4th grade. My parents used to get into fights all the time, especially when my dad was drinking. They'd start yelling and that would turn into actual fist fights. This time we were living in a small trailer, and the room I shared with all 3 of my siblings was at one end of the trailer, near the back door. So my dad comes home drunk. Mom is pissed and starts yelling and it escalates from there. Being in a small trailer, everything sounds so close and terrifying. And as the oldest of 4, I felt the need to protect my siblings, but I didn't know what to do. After a while my mom starts screaming my name at the top of her lungs and I can still hear my dad screaming too. And I knew that I needed to get myself and my siblings out of there ASAP. I ushered them out of the room, down the hallway, and out the back door and told them to head to our aunt's place, who lived a few trailers down. My mom was still screaming for me and all I knew to do was yell, "I got them out, Mom, we're leaving," before also going out the back to my aunt's. I don't recall ever being that scared. Cops came. They both went to jail and were both out in a couple days and acted like nothing ever happened. A few years ago I brought the incident up to my mom. I told her that I thought she was screaming at me to get my siblings out of the house and that's why I had. She told me she was screaming my name cause she was scared and wanted help and didn't know who else to call for. I felt so bad cause I didn't help her, but there's not really much I could have done. On the Nick subway I watched a grown man pull his pants down and use the support rod in the middle of the train as leverage to take a wicked steamy dump while making aggressive eye contact with me and a few other passengers. Stupidly staying in the ring when asked by a young, around 25, semi-pro boxer if I wanted to do a few rounds sparring with him. I'd just done about 5 rounds light with my slightly overweight, unfit mate. He was very good about it and wasn't a D. But after 2 rounds I had those words in my head. Probably walking in Gastown, in Vancouver, BC, my mom and I were looking for her sister, missing, homeless. That old Tez life. Dude in his 30s or so walks up to us, dressed normally, sort of business casual, and we look up and are about to say hi, when he covers his eyes, and starts counting down really slowly and drawn out. Nope. Big ole nope. We backed up and he followed, eyes still covered. He got to 4 or 5 and my mom just grabbed my arm and yanked me away towards people. The downtown east side of Vancouver is something else. A really tight-knit family of homeless, mentally ill, possible drug-using men and women. Many by choice, but not all. My nanny used to live in a sort of hotel there, so I know it well, but that rattled me. Happened a few hours ago. Was in the park with my younger brother just playing football, having nice time. Suddenly I see a man looking over in our direction. However, I can't be too sure because I don't have my glasses and I don't want to scare myself for no reason. He's carrying an orange bag so it's easy to see him. I ignore him and brother and I start walking around randomly, not following the path. Backtracking. Just not walking logically, if that makes sense. Kicking the ball to each other. The last time I went to this park on the 1st, a man of the same build ethnicity followed me, so I felt myself getting paranoid. This man kept his distance, but for instance we went into the basketball area and he would come to the entrance and lean against the gate just watching us. He could go behind the trees. It was clear he knew his way around this park and follow us, which I wouldn't notice if it wasn't for his bag. I wanted to confront him, but I was with my younger brother and didn't want to cause trouble. I wasn't really scared but more angry and frustrated. The man suddenly starts getting braver and walking faster towards us, and so we decide to quickly run home even though we were only out for 15 minutes. I gave my ex a ride to his court hearing for hitting my daughter. I pointed out to him inside that there was a sign that said no cell phones and that I would run our phones out to the car, and she right back, I felt like my heart was going to break my sternum and I had tunnel vision as I called my sister and told her I needed her and her husband to come with their pickup truck to my house right now because I had a small window to get as much of my daughters and my possessions out of my house before he was released from court. Just as we were wrapping up I saw him running down the street like Usain Bolt right for me. I yelled for them to drop what they had and get in the truck and go. Just as I close my car door he runs up and tries to smash it open. I fumbled with my keys to get the engine started. He then stands in front of my car blocking my path. I dismissed my burning desire to run him over and threw it in reverse and smashed the gas pedal down the block to the next street. I'd like to say things got better after that, but that was just the beginning of the worst year of my life. Now I'm past all of that and living a better life. Had to poop real bad in a 600 SQFT apartment that had about 10-11 friends in it. Not nearly enough privacy there. I remember taking my first ever dab with people I didn't know, other than my one friend. I took the largest rip ever and felt like I was going to die. I started hyperventilating while the driver was driving super fast on the highway, probably 80-85 mph. I made him pull over and let me out, where my friend and I made it to a side street and called our other friend to pick us up. The 3 friends who were in the car got into a huge car wreck the same night and the passenger was killed. I was at a baseball card convention when news of the incel van attack in Toronto broke. It was a slow afternoon so a group of us dealers gathered around the lobby's TV to watch and the other guys started defending him. If he had been an Islamoid terrorist, the ducking media would have kept it under wraps. And what are things gonna happen when women only go for jerks? Then the egghead in our group argued that those with less access to sex suffer just as much as those with low incomes and that we should re-educate women to find those men with less sexual market value attractive. I did not want to find out what he meant by re-educate so I packed up my cards and left. I was at home working on a gate outside. I heard my neighbor shoot off some rounds so I went to a spot I'd be able to overlook the pond and see if they were getting any of the geese. Then 3 shots came through the bushes right towards my house, roughly 100 feet or so away from me, not towards the pond. So I was like okay they're being an idiot time to gtfo. I go back over to working on the gate, about 300-400 feet from where I was when I was being stupid and nosy, even though they should not have been shooting towards the house. Then a ducking bullet cracked as it went less than 5 feet past my head. Yeah, that's when I said duck this. Hid behind a huge ass tree and called the cops and waited 45 minutes for them to show up lol. I was at work and thought I needed to fart. Turns out it was diarrhea and made up an excuse to leave for the rest of the day. My second from last job. The company owners are arrogant assholes who think workers are scum. The management are always blaming the workers for their mistakes and the workers themselves were always arguing and bickering amongst themselves. The place was so toxic for people like me who just wanted to do a day's work without all the drama. I have leukemia. I completed 5 months of chemo in October, but my white count has been low since then, so I am high risk for infection. My wife just gave birth a few weeks ago, but had severe preeclampsia and had to be put on blood pressure meds. I went to pick up dinner and on my way home figured I'd also grab her meds at the pharmacy real quick. Except a ton of people had the same thought, and I found myself like 20 people back in line. I was set to wait. Wife definitely needed her meds. Until I hear coughing. I look up and a 2-year-old kid is hacking everywhere. That is no bueno for me. Yep. Had to nope the hell out of that line and send my mother-in-law to the pharmacy for wife's meds. TLDR. I'm a 35-year-old, tattooed bearded man afraid of small children. Going through one now. Where I work, changes in management are fairly common, and we're in the middle of another one. Usually it's just a shuffle from one area to another, adjust, move on. This time I don't think it's going to end well for me. When I first moved to where I'm living now, it's across the river from a college town city with a main street that is littered with restaurants and bars. So one night a couple friends and I went out and decided to bar hop. Nothing crazy, just wanted to check out the different places. Walked into one hole in the wall joint with only a handful of people in there. Everybody's head turned and looked at us like we were from another planet. Weird vibe immediately. Bartender approaches slowly, asking how we're doing and what he can get us. We order our round of drinks. Bartender very slowly says, "Is that all?" Again. Weird vibe, but whatever. Random guy, later found out to be the owner, comes and sits next to us and starts chatting us up. Where we're from, what we're doing in the area, if we're cool. Lots of weird conversation starters. At this point, we want out but our drinks haven't come back yet, so we get our drinks and try to keep to ourselves. Guy keeps asking if he can get us anything at all, off the menu. It's at this point I realize that the two women at the other end are doing coke off the bar. There's also now two large men standing against the wall right behind us, just grilling us. Not wanting to make a scene, we all shared a "let's get the duck outta here" look. Talked amongst ourselves for a minute. Finished our drinks as fast as possible. Paid and left. The owner was trying to talk to us the entire time we're paying and making our way to the door. Trying to keep us there as the two large men slowly close in. We got the duck out and said nothing until we hit the other side of the street. Get that feeling every few minutes. Anxiety sucks. When I was 19, after graduating from my 2-year college, I was studying film. A professor that I, and many other students, I looked up to a lot, asked me to travel with him to Colombia to finish a documentary he was working on. Having traveled with him internationally in the past 4 class trips, I thought it would be a great opportunity. It was an all expense paid trip, so how could I not? So I traveled from NY to South America all by myself. And once I got there, he gave me a tour of our Airbnb that went like this. So here's the office, kitchen, living room, our bathroom, and bedroom. There's just one bed. I hope that's okay. I tried to keep cool and slept head to toe the first night. The next morning he sits me down to talk, and after his long intro he finally gets to the point. He asked that the next part stay between us and started with, "So I've only ever been with my wife." That was the moment that all the hairs on my body stood up and I was like, I need to get the duck out of here. Update. So that evening I told him that while I was flattered, I wasn't interested and thought it was wildly unfair for him to do that to me. I tried to be polite because I didn't know what to expect at that point. The last thing I wanted was for him to get violent. He backdaled the entire time, all of which I have an audio recording of, and I slept on an armchair in the living room the rest of the stay. Also for reference, my professor looked like a small Venezuelan Gandalf. Long white beard and all. I also had a family friend that lived in the city, so he picked me up my last night and took me to the airport. I'd never felt so safe in my life. When I realized the shelter I work for is pocketing donated money, keeping and using donations for themselves first, taking their food, taking housing products all for their own personal use. These people have well-paying jobs with plenty of overtime, benefits like health, life and dental. So yeah, duck that place and duck those people. Sucks for the ones that do have to stay there. Job sucked and fat co-workers all quit at the same time. Too small town. Friends vanished after a breakup. Creepy ex. Best friend betrayed my trust. Hell yeah, I'm moving away. I had been renting a house from my sister. I paid my bills every month precisely on time for 6 years. No delays. No missed payments. etc. About 6 months ago my sister lost her job. She decided to drink her, not insignificant, savings away and not look for a job. And then when things got tight, she started using my rent check to pay her rent instead of the mortgage on the house I was living in. I didn't discover any of this until a letter showed up one day from some attorney saying pay up or we foreclose in 30 days. Fortunately things dragged out long enough for me to be able to afford to move. But that was the last straw. I had to get away from family. This was not the first time I had been forced to rely on them and gotten screwed. But it is definitely the last. Grabbing some Waffle House in a not so good part of town around 2 AM after work. Dude whipped out a gun and was screaming at the chick he was with. Definitely my most gotta get the duck out of here moment. A few years later got a job as a 911 cowtaker. Same Waffle House got shot up. So there is that. A company I was working at got bought out by another company. They tried to make us sign agreements that we wouldn't work in the industry for 2 years after working for our company. So like, I'm not allowed to have a job in my field for 2 years if they lay me off. A bunch of us refused to sign it but nothing happened. Then people in management started getting moved around. And they put someone in charge of me who was really incompetent. When a big company buys a small company with a lot of name recognition, I can see the writing on the wall. I got another job and got the hell out of there.